Hi, I'm Tim Beggy. Welcome to a special episode of Guts and Bolts. An adrenaline-filled look at today's technology, how it works, and how it got here. This episode, it's sudden death for a Philadelphia icon. We're on site to witness the implosion of Veterans Stadium. From the monster machines that tear it up, to the intricate web of explosives that'll bring it down. We're here to give you the guts and bolts of how it's all done. And while plenty of people are clamoring for a view of the Vets' last stand, we're the only ones inside the blast zone. So grab a cheesesteak, sit back, and get the inside story on the Rumble in Philly. It's history done my way. Next on Guts and Bolts. Right now I'm in about, I'd say right center field of the historical Veterans Stadium. Today we're going to be bringing down the house. Literally, we're going to be bringing you the guts and bolts of Implosion. We're going to fill this pothole. Implosion. It's the demolition of choice for unwanted ballparks. Like Cincinnati's Synergy Riverfront Stadium. In 2002, it took just 37 seconds to reduce the former home of the Big Red Machine to a 45-foot high pile of rubble. For a demolition to be classified as an implosion, the structure has to come down completely within its own footprint. It's really like a choreographed dance of demolition, with carefully placed explosives and intricate time sequences. The results are truly amazing to see. But it's taken a long time for the art of demolition to perfect these awe-inspiring implosions. One of the first recorded uses of dynamite to demolish a structure was in 1883, when 5 blasts brought down a 200-foot chimney in Budapest, Hungary. In 1931, Miami's Central Schoolhouse became one of the first undamaged buildings to be demolished with explosives. It was brought down to make way for a new post office, and the contractor figured dynamite would be much faster and cheaper than old methods like the wrecking ball. He was right. His bill for explosives was roughly $60. The cost of explosives has gone up since then, but so has the size of the buildings that can be brought down. Seemingly, there was no limit to what could be imploded. Tall buildings, long buildings, smokestacks, factories. Over time, they've all been felled with just the touch of a button. In 1994, it took only 12 seconds and 12,000 pounds of explosives to set the record for the biggest structure ever imploded. The Sears Merchandising Center, all 2.7 million square feet of it. Its home was in Northeast Philadelphia. Today, just 10 miles south of that massive implosion, Philly is going for another record, the slowest demolition in history. The reason for this prolonged implosion, which will take over 60 seconds, is to help reduce the unfortunate side effects of implosions: ground vibrations, flying debris, and dust. There's a residential neighborhood only about 350 feet away from the Vet. If the implosion causes any damage, it would surely put Philadelphia's brotherly love to the test. To help minimize any fouls on game day, the contractor running the job, Driscoll Hunt, has hired demolition company Brandenburg Industrial Services to handle all the prep work. Brandenburg has been working for the past 3 months under the guidance of their project manager, John Webb.
You got to get the structure prepared for the implosion and minimize the amount of dust and vibration that'll be caused, and that's really what the prep work's all about, just getting the structure ready for the explosives operation by removing as much of the structure as you can while still keeping it structurally sound.
While the big machines were tearing down all non-load bearing walls, crews inside were pulling out anything else they could get their hands on: seats, the sound system, escalators, even light bulbs. By reducing the stadium to nothing but a concrete carcass, when the big day comes, there will be less resistance to the implosion, and also less stuff being pulverized into dust, meaning less dust for the neighbors. Throughout the process, Brandenburg sets aside anything with salvage value, like wiring and pipes. This helps keep the cost of the demolition down and also serves to be more environmentally friendly.
Basically, we're just segregating out the materials that are in here because some have scrap value. You can see the steel sitting over there. The concrete you separate, and then the rebar you separate, which also has scrap value. This is what our business is all about. You come in, you take a building apart, you sort out the valuable materials, and you haul off and dispose of what's left.
Another key step in prepping the Vet for its date with destiny was carving this wedge out of the stadium's exterior. You know how it's easier to cut a cake once you get the first slice out? This is sort of the same principle. Without this open space, the first section of the stadium would have no room to fall. But Jim Santoro, serving as a consultant to the Phillies, pointed out how hard this section of mechanical demolition was.
They used a crane and a wrecking ball to take that wedge out. It took them about 4.5 days to get that section down. As you can see, it can be very slow and tedious taking a building down mechanically. Not all buildings are appropriate to take down by explosives. Not all buildings are appropriate to take down mechanically. Sometimes it's a combination of both. That's exactly what they've done here.
4.5 days for one small section, and about a minute for the rest of it. Well, that adds up to some fine viewing. Don't go away. Philadelphia's Veterans Stadium has stood for over 30 years, but if all goes as planned, it's only going to take about a minute for it all to come crumbling down. It'll be a memorable day for the legions of dedicated Philadelphia sports fans. Driscoll Hunt's project manager Nick Petros is among their ranks.
You have to have some bittersweet feelings about tearing this down, though.
Well, yeah, I do. I grew up here in Philadelphia, or just outside of Philadelphia, and I've been coming to sporting events here since I was a little kid. And the Vet was home to a lot of good memories and many, many more bad memories.
Mm-hmm.
But I never thought in a million years when I sat here and watched the game that I'd be running the job, being in charge of tearing the place down.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It is exciting. The Vet has a long history.
When it opened in 1971, the Vet was the largest stadium in the National League, with room for over 56,000 fans. It was built as a multi-use arena, a popular trend at the time. The benefit of stadiums like this was that they could house everything from baseball and football games to concerts and monster truck rallies. The downside was that they didn't work particularly well for any one of them. When it came to baseball, many said the seats at the Vet were just too far away from the action. Still, it would prove to be a field of dreams for the Phillies. In 1980, with Tug McGraw on the mound, the team won its only World Series in their 121-year history. In the summer of 2003, Tug McGraw returned to the mound to throw out the honorary last pitch at Veterans Stadium. Soon, the Vet would be no more, and a brand new park was already going up right next door. But sadly, McGraw, hero to generations of Phillies fans, would die of brain cancer before he ever got to see the new ballpark. Bringing the stadium down and making sure it all lands in the right place is up to the Implosion subcontractor Demolition Dynamics. Most implosions drop the building straight down, on top of itself. But at the Vet, the game plan is to rotate as much of the stadium into the field as possible. The field was built 25 feet below street level. Putting the debris inside the stadium will bring it back up to grade. Now let's get into the guts and bolts of how it's done. Before the big day, the Implosion crew must carefully round all 4 of the bases. First, they drill holes in supporting columns. Second, they load the holes with dynamite. Third, they wrap the structure for safety. And finally, they wire the explosives for detonation. Here's the play-by-play. To bring the stadium down, you've got to kick its legs out from under it. 515 steel reinforced concrete support columns are the legs. and 2,518 pounds of dynamite will be doing the kicking. For the dynamite to be effective, you have to place it inside the columns. And of course, to be able to do that, you first have to drill some holes. The demolition team will drill anywhere from 1 up to 10 holes in each column. With a few hundred holes left to go, the crew was more than happy to let me get in on the action. Now, Vice President of Project Management Jeff Sizemore is going to take me through the next step, loading the explosives.
Okay, so what's the procedure here? What's the rundown?
The first thing we do is we check the hole with your tamping rod to make sure the hole is of adequate depth.
So ideally, how deep you want to go?
What we do is we drill 75% of the depth of the column. Explosives work in 360 degrees.
Right.
So what happens is once that is detonated, the explosives, the nitroglycerin is actually detonated, it creates a 360 degree energy field, and that rapid expansive gas blows through the side of the column, and as soon as it hits the open atmosphere, then the energy from the explosives dissipates very rapidly.
In other words, too much dynamite is not going to do you any good. The energy will be just wasted on empty space. Not enough could leave the vet partially collapsed and dangerously unstable. So it's critical to get it just right. So before even one stick of dynamite gets loaded, Jeff and his boss, blaster in charge Steve Pettigrew, will head outside and perform a critical test shot on one of the 103 exterior columns. The test will determine the exact amount of explosives that are needed to bring down the columns.
All right, Jeff, go ahead and warm up the blaster machine.
They're testing 2.5 pounds of dynamite on a 5-foot by 4-foot column.
We're in the red.
Here we go. Count. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. Good breakage and several cracks and opened up the rebar. Plenty of room for rotation. Only this column here would probably just add 10% more powder in the interior side, just to create more of a wedge.
Good cover too.
Yeah, you can see
anywhere.
Yeah, you can see it didn't even penetrate the first layer of fabric. So, looks real good.
That fabric is designed to prevent debris from shooting through the air like concrete shrapnel, or fly, as demolitionists call it.
Fly is a bad thing. If you have a piece of displaced concrete flying 300 feet away, it could hit something. If that something happens to be a person, that's a bad thing. So you want to minimize that risk at all cost.
So what they do is put up this black 16-ounce geotextile fabric all over the place, and then back it up with 11.5 gauge chain link fence material. It protects people, but it also shields another potential target, the wiring. If any debris cuts the wiring, it could derail the whole implosion. So now we've drilled the holes, loaded the dynamite, and wrapped the stadium. But still, there's miles to go before we sleep. About 5 miles, in fact, of detonation cord, that is. The wiring of the detonation cord is a very intricate, very complicated web connecting all the dynamite charges. It is this web that will control the sequences of explosions by using different time delays to different charges.
It takes a very precise blasting plan, and we'll have about 400 different delays within this structure, ranging from 17 milliseconds all the way up to 9,600 milliseconds. That'll sequence all the structural members to fail directly on cue, so that the structure rotates and we get it to react exactly how we want it to.
Looking at a cross-section of the stadium, there are 3 main rows of support columns. The first 2 rows of columns will be drilled with up to 10 holes each and loaded with up to 20 pounds of dynamite. The goal here is to take out 8 to 10 foot sections of the column and allow everything above it to drop straight down. The outer columns are loaded with only about 2.5 pounds of dynamite each, loaded at the base.